There we go. Good evening, Hall of Fame Dynasty members. I am here, your host, Jonathan, and your commissioner, and I am also joined by two of our members, obviously, Jared and Kevin tonight. So how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing amazing. Ready to get this thing going, bro.
And I am also joined by...
Oh, I'm doing great.
It's different. We've never done a three-man broadcast like this, so this will definitely be something interesting for us. Obviously, I've had Mac on one time, I think once or twice, so this will be different, but I'm excited to get into it. And I know that we're not to baseball season yet, and I know a bunch of us are getting super excited with it, so I will say that I'm really ready for this Bryce Harper and Manny Machado saga to end. I just really want to know where they're going, who they're going to, especially as a White Sox fan. It's exciting, and it was exciting and fun at first, but now it's just getting into that territory of frustration and tiredness. I just really want to know where they're going. So starting with Manny Machado, where do you guys think he ends up? I mean, last we know is the White Sox are in the lead, Philly's still in the running, and it seems like the Yankees are out of it.
I think you got to go White Sox. You got to lean White Sox right now, personally, on Machado. I'm thinking. I mean, that's the way the winds are blowing, it appears.
I got White Sox, too.
I'm hoping. I mean, it's one of those things of it would be the largest contract they've handed out, and then the fact that, I mean, you kind of get to have that John Lester signing like the Cubs had of, okay, here's the star veteran. We know he can lead this rebuild. Let's go. Now, moving on to Harper, this is a little bit more – this one's a lot harder to determine because the Phillies were in the lead – or Nationals were in the lead a few days ago. Now, all of a sudden, the Phillies seem to be in the lead. Jared, who do you think that Harper ends up with? It was a toss-up at first, and now we really don't know where he's going to end up.
You know, I agree. This one's a lot tougher than the Machado thing, in my opinion. I don't know, just for the heck of it, the way they've been in all these talks, the Phillies are desperate to land one of these big names. So I'm gonna guess Phillies. You know.
What about you, Kevin?
I have no idea.
Neither does he. You know, Harper. I mean,
it clearly seems like it. I mean, especially as the Bryce Harper owner, Jared, what do you think? Where are you hoping that he lands? Because the Nationals seems like a great place to be, especially with Soto and Robles and Turner and Rendon. I mean, he knows that lineup, but then going to Philly, you have guys like Gene Segura and Odubel Herrera, and they seem to be on the up and up recently. So as a Harper owner, where are you hoping that he ends up?
Well, I've doubled down on that because besides this league, I own him in my other dynasty of record. Honestly, probably right now, just the teams we've been hearing in the conversation a lot, I would probably prefer he either stay with the Nationals. Again, great lineup, knows the situation. I wouldn't be against the Phillies. I like the young upcoming team. The only thing I always worry about anytime you go to a new team is just that transition period. And Harper has been prone to slow starts last few years, so going to a new team probably wouldn't help that. So I think I would hope he would stay at the Nationals, but if he goes somewhere else, a team like the Phillies, I could get down with that.
That makes a lot of sense. So enough about baseball. Why don't we go ahead and move on into our obviously what we want to cover tonight is NHL news and NBA news, especially as the season is drawing down. We are getting to the last few weeks of both sports, and they will end about the same time just as baseball is kicking up. So I'm going to actually go ahead and I'm going to screen share our show that we have for tonight. So that way it can show and present to everyone. And we will kick it off here. So obviously, like I said, we've got a big league reminder. We do have the trade deadline coming in just under 2 weeks now because that'll be on Sunday, January 27th at 10:59 Central Standard Time. Have those trades in beforehand. We'll obviously get them. They'll still have that 24-hour period, but we can still push it through. As long as the two teams agree to the trade beforehand, it will be allowed. So, and mentioning that, we did have a large trade between the Avalanche and Golden Knights. It started off, I originally was trading for Thomas Chabot and Mackenzie Gore, and we had actually a lot bigger of a, I I guess, challenge for it, just because of the fact that I know you jumped in there, Jared. I know Kevin jumped in there, and he tried to make it even larger, adding in
Carlson.
Eric Carlson as well. And it somehow came down to the Avalanche, ending up with Shabbat and Gore for Robert Hogg, center Jamie Benn, and right wing Jacob Voracek. And there were some MLB pieces in there as well.
Right.
It's a good deal for both teams. That was a lot more than I thought was going to end up being paid.
Yeah, I mean, from the Avalanche standpoint, I mean, you got to love his willingness just to dive in. He's making a play, trying to go for that championship, and for the Golden Knights, this turned out exactly how we want this to go. He agrees to a trade, and then it goes to the market, and he ends up squeezing, from his opinion, what ended up being a better deal for himself. So, I mean, I think it worked great all the way around, other than the three of us who lost out on the deal.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm still disappointed on it.
I mean, that would have been a hell of a combination to add to your team, especially as you've been getting hotter recently, Kevin, adding Carlson and Shabbat, even though Shabbat is yet to come back from injury. I mean, especially as a 20, 21-year-old as he is, he's still putting up over 6 points per game in our league. So, especially Carlson, who's been finally gotten back to his performance line. It was hard to see him move. I'm kind of glad that Carlson was not a part of that deal to go to the Avalanche, as obviously they still have the best record in the league. It would have been hard to see both of them move. At least it was only one. So
I believe if both of them moved, it would have been complete domination of the Avalanche.
Oh, absolutely. And it works out for the Avalanche. He has a strong defensive line, and now he's a kind of weak up front. So it kind of balances out, as good defensemen are hard to find. So we'll see how that ends up in the long run. I mean, it makes the front line of the Golden Knights a lot stronger with Voracek and Ben, who haven't been playing up to their top performance, but still getting a lot of points compared to the other guys that he had on his team.
Right.
So we do have 7 weeks until playoffs begin, and that does include this week. And unfortunately, the Avalanche did take back the division lead recently, and the Chelios division is in a two-way tie between myself and the Golden Knights, and we are not far from the Carolina Hurricanes either, who are 1 game back at this point. And then I noticed you put on the trade block here, I believe Kevin put this up there, that the Minnesota Wild is selling his team. He's in full fire sale mode, except for his youngins, which most of his team is young, so it's kind of hard.
Do we have clarification on what he considers the youngins? Because I think they're all 26 and below on his team. I mean,
I know that he does consider, I'm sure probably anyone over probably 28 might be older in his opinion.
Yeah.
But that might be about it. And there's not very many, because I know he went young and strong for the most part. So,
right.
So let's move on to our first matchup of the week that we'll talk about. And I'll toss this one over to you, Kevin, as this is your Nashville Predators team that came out a lot stronger than I thought they would this week. So go ahead.
So this week was actually a little bit more, I guess, challenging, if you want to say. Now, do we have somebody with Tampa Bay or?
Yes, that is Steve McGlynn. He has the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Bulls, the Seahawks, and I forget what Toronto Blue Jays.
Okay, well, toward the end of the week, I got a little bit nervous. I didn't have as many players playing, which is the same predicament I'm in this week against the Minnesota Wild. But, I mean, I finished strong. I'm 7-8 now. I believe I'm in 5th in the standings.
No, you would be currently 6th.
I'm 6th?
Yeah, you'd be 6th. You'd have that last playoff spot as of right now, because the Carolina Hurricanes sit at 9-5. It's currently 3-3, which is actually fairly balanced.
So that's not where I want to be. I need another spot.
Well, considering where you were earlier this season, that's a hell of a climb that you've made, because you're only 1 game away from 500 when you were sitting near the bottom of the pack early in the season. I mean, a lot of it was bad luck. A lot of it was underperformance, but
That's all my teams this year.
Well, especially, I mean, I ended up getting Chris Letang from you, but that ended up working out in your favor. You've gotten some strong center and winger play as of late, too. So that's definitely helped you, especially, well, earlier in the season, too, you were always around that 280, 270 mark. In the last few weeks, you've been sitting around 350. So actually, looking at the details of this match, it was not close. It was crazy to think that it was so close at the start of the week, but you really pulled away at the end here.
Yeah, better than I thought I would, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at the 100-point difference in skaters, you averaged almost a full point better than he did. Obviously, 15 starts makes a big difference, but the way you guys were trending, it wouldn't have mattered at that point. I mean, even if he does have it, maybe it's closer, but there's no way he overtakes you. Obviously, you guys were close in goals with 16 versus 18. He had 22 assists to your 35. You were able to play a much cleaner game with penalty minutes, but everything else, especially his goalies, killed him. They did no favors for him. And you actually had a very good week with 21.8 points out of your goalies.
Oh, we got to swing back.
I like that. I need to keep that.
And then the 3 stars of the week, you actually were able to take 2 of them with your all-around forward with Blake Wheeler putting up 35.7 points. Left winger Artemi Panarin actually was about the only big performer for Tampa Bay as he put up 35.4. And then obviously left winger Evander Kane for you, Kevin, put up 32.4. So this is a real frontline forward-heavy matchup, with just the fact that all 3 stars were obviously left wingers or right wingers of that sort. And it was great to see you kind of finally starting to bounce back and make a challenge within that tough division of yours.
Oh, mine's very tough. I don't like it at all.
I think this is the most balanced we've been all year, though, between baseball and football and this. This is probably the closest we've had between 1 through 6.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Oh,
So moving on, I'm going to toss this one to you, Jared, because I'm sure you'll have fun with, obviously, the 2 Chris's facing each other. You know Chris Barnes a little bit more than I do.
Right.
But I'll toss this one to you.
All right. Well, this was a matchup I was looking forward to, really, in both sports, and we'll talk about NBA later. But the battle of the Chris's, if you will, you know, the Kings. Since Chris Barnes took over the Kings, you can see him trying to make his mark. He's made some moves. You know, I'm thinking we'll eventually see him really tap in maybe on a trade. I know he made the one trade with Keith, but he's been playing well. But the original Chris to the league has been steady all year long. So I kind of expected a little bit of a closer final score. But the ultimate result is about what I expected as far as who won.
I agree with you, and it ended up 339.2 to 237.8, with the LA Kings unfortunately dropping to that 5-10 mark, as the Golden Knights were able to prop themselves up to a 10-5 record. And I thought this one was going to be a lot closer, and like you said, I do think the LA Kings and Chris are going to end up making a move at some point. And it'll be exciting to see what they do. Just the fact that we've seen them have some very good weeks over the last few weeks since they've taken over within the last month and a half.
Right.
I really think the Kings can be sneaky near the end of the line here, just especially as he's chasing Kevin. I know Kevin doesn't want to hear that, but
no, he's a big threat to my.
But to that point, I mean, it's what? He's 2 games back with 7 weeks. So,
yep.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin's definitely in the power position right now, being up 2. But, I mean, prior to Barnes taking over this team, I mean, there's no way I would have thought the Kings would have been in this position at this point. So.
Oh, absolutely not. So why don't we dig into this one? Actually fairly close. The problem was the LA Kings just couldn't find the back of the net. I mean, as you look, 331 points from skaters for the Golden Knights versus 208 for the LA Kings. Right. You had a similar amount of starts. Obviously, LA was on the lower end of the schedule this week with 56 to 70, but only about a half point per start difference. And you look the fact that they were able to find 24 assists, and just unfortunately the goals didn't come this week.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Kings average of 4.3, I mean, it's respectable. But yeah, that 14 start difference, especially when Vegas did have the half point advantage anyway there, makes a huge difference. And you look at it, he was able to do all that while still having 42 penalty minutes. I mean, that's a high number and still put up the amount he did and won by 100. I looking at the Kings, and I know he's toying around with this because he and I have had begun discussions, but he's got the ability. And you look at the bottom 32 points from his goalies, he's got the opportunity there. He's flush with goalies. Possibly if there's someone struggling in that position, maybe he could trade a goalie to add a skater, or something to give himself a little bit of boost there on the line. So again, I just have a feeling he's going to try to make something. Knowing Barnes the way I do, and only being 2 games out with 7, he's going to want to try to do something to bring it down to that last week for sure.
Oh, of course. And especially, I do believe he was one of the teams that was auto-drafted about 8 goalies going into the season. We just kind of sat there like, I guess this is how it's going to work. But it may end up working in his favor because we have seen some really poor goalie play out of both teams, or out of a lot of teams this year. Right. So, and I mean, especially on top of that, you look, he was only 22 shots on goal behind. So the fact that he's putting up a decent amount of shots on goal allows him to just kind of say, hey, this was a bad, unlucky week. The fact that you were able to have that many shots on goal and not get the same offensive production really hurts. But I mean, blocks was probably his biggest lacking point in this one, where he trailed by almost 40 blocks, and that's almost the good 40 points itself.
Yep.
But I was surprised to see the 3 stars of the week after looking at it. All of them were defensemen. I mean, you look at the top scorer of the week was Mark Giordano with 38.7 points for Vegas, and also had Erik Karlsson put up 33.4. And the surprising one is definitely defenseman Erik Gustafsson for the Chicago Blackhawks, obviously owned by Barnes and his Kings here. Gustafsson's been a big surprise for the Blackhawks, and even I did not expect this type of production out of him the way that he's played the last month. So especially him being able to play the waiver wire and find a guy like that is important. I mean, we saw what happened in baseball with Max Muncy and German Marquez and some other guys. So as long as I think Barnes sticks to the waiver wire and, like you said, deals from his strength, it'll definitely help him.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's move on to the next one. And I know this is a tough one for you, Jared, obviously. Oh, yeah. I did not even see this happening. I really expected it to come down to Sunday and between your Ducks and my Blackhawks. And we've both been playing really well. And I think the Golden Knights pointed it out that I'm on an 8-game win streak, or that I haven't lost in almost 2 months. And that's how this one went. 421 to 335. And I don't know. You did not have a bad week. You would have pretty much beat about half the league anyways. You would have ended up losing to Kevin had you faced him, but right. I mean, you would have beat half the league. So it drops you to 11-4. I bring myself up to 10-5 after that rough start that I had to the year. So let's look at this one. And it was, you had an awesome week, almost 5 points per start. Obviously 320 points from your skaters, 400.7 from mine. 14 goals to 19 goals, 33 assists to 39 assists. The big difference here came from the power play points, with me getting 19 and you getting 10. Mm-hmm. That was a bigger part of it. And then looking at it, you had more faceoffs won, you had more hits. A lot of it just came down to pure offensive performance by both of us. Sometimes you get lucky finding the back of the net more often than not, and that's kind of what happened here.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things when you have 2 teams playing well, 2 teams match up pretty well. I mean, all it takes is one slip. I mean, going into Saturday, before Saturday's play, you were up by about 15. I mean, it looked like it was going to come down to Sunday. And if I remember right, I think I had more players going on Saturday by 1 or 2. And Sunday, I think we roughly had about the same amount of guys. Anyway, So it did. It looked like it was going to come down Sunday. And, I made a joke about my guys just taking a random day off on Saturday. But it's what it seemed like. I mean, to me, have more guys on Saturday than you, but your guys doubled me up on Saturday. I mean, Saturday was the key. Sunday was what it was, fairly even. But Saturday was the key to which will allow you to go from basically a 15-point lead to 80-90 when the week was done. So, but that's the thing. I mean, that's why these matchups and these division battles are so tight that, I mean, it literally could be one good day that's going to make the difference.
And that's pretty much what happened, because on Saturday, I pulled it up while you were talking there. I got a 30-point lead from Saturday. I put up 91.6 with 13 starts. You put up 58.9 on 14. And a lot of it was Jack Eichel only putting up 3, Brock Nelson putting up 1, TJ Oshie, who was really good for you earlier in the week, at 0.6.
Yep.
And it was just it was a really brutal day for a day where you had almost pretty much a full lineup with 14 starts.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just the 3 guys you named there. Of course, Eichel was his first game back from the IR, and we'd actually had several of us had that discussion. But, obviously that's a guy I'm plugging in my lineup regardless. But, yeah, I mean, the other guys, I mean, you look at Nelson, who's been scoring pretty well over the last week or so, to do that. Again, ultimately probably wouldn't have made a difference, but still you expect your guys to go out and play a little bit better than that. So hopefully they got that out of their system, because I got a big game this week.
Yep, and we'll get to that after we get to the rest of this. And it was funny, like I said, a lot of these matchups were really heavy at one position. And as you can see for our 3 stars of the week, all 3 of them were centers. I mean, Mark, I don't know how to say his name. I think it's Schifele or Scheifele.
Schifele, something like that.
Yeah, he put up 33.1 points for you. And then my 2, why did I put points? I don't know. Center Sean Monahan.
He scored a lot of them. That's why.
It's Sean Monahan put up 33.9, and then Braden Point, as I put points for some reason, 41.3 points on the week. And he was a guy that I was so happy to draft, and I just had to get back earlier this season, because I remember drafting him when he first broke into the league for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it's got that sentimental attachment. So I had to get him back, and I was glad I did. Yeah, so moving on to go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I understand that. There's just some of those guys that you just have that attachment to. It helps when they're also talented. So
it really does. So we had this one. This I did not expect to be as close as it was.
Awesome game.
It came down to under 2 points, and I was actually talking with Chris of the Golden Knights going into Sunday night. Him and I are kind of hitting each other up in the DMs, just discussing it and going, is this really going to happen? Especially going into the final few minutes of the games, the Avalanche were only up by 1.4, and had he had any of his guys committed any penalties, he would have ended up losing this game. But he ended up coming out on top by 1.4 points by a score of 367.8 to 366.4, which did bring the Carolina Hurricanes down into second place in the third place technically in the Chelios division, while the Avalanche were able to separate from you, Jared, and move up to a good record of 12-3. This still isn't the closest one of the year. Obviously, that was with Kevin and I think it was the Carolina Hurricanes. Funny to mention it by 0.4, by literally a shot. And the Carolina Hurricanes love to play these close matchups. Whether they end up on either side of it, that seems to be their game one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina with these close games, I mean, again, one shot here or there, how it could have changed not only for them, but of course, shuffled just the overall standings. It's just insane.
So let's go ahead and look at it. I want to see what you think, especially as you suffered one of these close losses earlier this year, Kevin. Let's take a look at this matchup. 343 points from the Skaters for the Hurricanes, 325 from the Avalanche. Both were just over 5.1 points per start, and one start made a difference here. Honestly, like if the Avalanche don't have one start more, or if the Hurricanes are able to find a start by picking up a guy, this matchup's different, and it ends up throwing the whole league out of whack.
The way I'm looking at it, it'll be a 3-way tie for third. between you, the Vegas, and Sean. So I mean,
the other division would still be tied. So I mean, that's how crazy that is.
And I'm trying to find, and the Avalanche. I go ahead and go. Why don't you guys go ahead and discuss it? I'm going to look something up here, see if this actually affected the matchup or not.
The biggest, I guess, difference I see in this matchup was the goalies. I mean, that's a 20-point difference.
Yeah, it's huge.
Everything else is neck and neck. Just about. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty close.
What one player changes the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina doubled him up on power play points. That kept it close, but you're right. I mean, that not only how many goalie points Avalanche scored, I mean, that's just a huge number, but yeah, to outscore him by 20. I mean, that's huge, and it's got to be one of the highest goalie scores of the year, I'd imagine.
That's the highest one I've seen. I mean, I could be wrong.
Just that I was watching that game down to the end. It was just, and obviously, no offense to my lifelong friend, but I was definitely rooting for Carolina.
So actually looking at it here, because processed on January 12th, that would have been that day. The Colorado Avalanche actually were able to sneak in one extra start, and it came from Brendan Gallagher. He picked him up what would have been Friday night going into Saturday, and Gallagher gave him 2.8 or 2.6 out of the right wing position.
Wow!
So that one little start out of Brendan Gallagher made the difference. So that's a hell of a clutch pickup by Keith. I got to give him props for that. Even though in the long run it didn't look like much, it ended up making the difference here. And surprisingly, even though the Carolina Hurricanes sold off some pieces earlier this year, they're right with everyone else, just kind of like they were in NFL. So Sean, for making some weird trades, it's still working out in his favor.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, in a game this close, I mean, we see it in reality all the time. Does a close loss like this, demoralize a team like Carolina? And does he put that behind him and move on? Because he has, remember he started the year 3-0, 4-0. I mean, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Hit his snag in the middle, and he's been playing better lately. And as we've already said, I mean, he's obviously right in the thick of things. For everything's still on the table for him. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they close the year.
Oh, especially with the fact that they traded away some of their younger guys, as I think Nathan McKinnon was one of them. And yeah, I mean, McKinnon didn't have, I'm trying to find it here as I don't see him anywhere for some reason. But oh, there he is, 17.8. Not a spectacular week, but not bad at all. So it ended up making a difference. Just the fact that Brendan Gallagher, one little pickup, ended up changing the whole dynamic of the league. So obviously the Carolina Hurricanes were led by left winger Sebastian Aho with 42.3 points, which he's been really hot recently. And it helps, obviously, the Hurricanes that it's one of his favorite teams. He gets to root for him. So that helps him. Matthias Ekholm, as you and I were talking, Jared, he's really hot to play this last few weeks. And it's surprising just the fact that nothing's really changed in terms of his time on ice. A lot of it's just kind of scoring more often and being involved on a very good Nashville team.
Yeah.
And then center Jake Guentzel, 36.5 points for Carolina. He can't really be disappointed in anyone but maybe Semyon Varlamov, who put up negative 1.8, and that's where those points from goalies really can make a difference every once in a while.
Yep.
So let's move on to the last one, and this one should be some fun because I did not see this going this way. I know Max said that he wasn't paying attention to his lineup, but the fact that neither of these teams paid attention to their lineup all week.
He overlooked the Rangers.
He really did. He took the week off, and it ended up biting him in the ass as he lost by 21 points to the Rangers, who do have a guy in who they did have 1, 2, 3 guys on IR this week in his starting lineup and did not touch it. And it ended up bringing the Rangers up to 4-11 and the Wild down to 5-10.
Yeah, there's only one game difference.
And it blows my mind because I know the Wild have been active all season. This is the 1 week they took off because they expected to be able to win it. And they really should have, as we move on here, the fact that they had 7 more starts, but 20 less points from skaters and a whole point difference in terms of points per start. That's brutal. I mean, we've seen under 4 points per start before, but that's when, okay, somebody forgot. Obviously, when we were switching managers, we were switching owners, we had the change of, okay, I'm not sure how to run this team, not sure what I want to do, and guys kind of just let it play out for a week. So you see 37, 38, 39 starts, but the Wild had 57 on the week, and they were able to barely hit double digits in goals, obviously put up more assists, but just their team didn't show up this week, kind of like they didn't, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of something to say all this. I mean, across the board, I mean, it's fairly close and everything else, but I mean, yeah, just that one stat just jumps out at you that even with 7 more starts, I mean, under 4 start, Rangers was almost at 5. I mean, it just shows, kind of goes to what Mac said, just kind of some bad luck. I mean, to have 7 more starts and get outscored by a point per start, I mean, it's just crazy. His guys just weren't efficient, kind of like what we said on the other matchup. Sometimes puck finds the back of the net more often than it should. Sometimes it's the opposite. Unfortunately for him, it was the opposite this week.
And you really look at it when we come to the line, and a lot of it came down to more of the peripherals of the things that we don't really seem to put, I wouldn't say a lot of focus on, but something we really don't cover a whole ton of is the hits and the blocks. The Rangers had 99 hits on the week. The Wild had 50, so that's a good 25-point difference there, with hits being half a point per. Right. And then 21 blocks more for the Rangers, which is crazy considering they had less starts. I mean, especially those two stats are usually, okay, it's a counting stat. It's going to compile fairly easily the more starts you get. But 99 hits, that's really what changed the game here. I mean, just the fact that the Rangers were aggressive, and it worked out in their favor.
Yep.
Big time.
Looks, you know, I had my guys take Saturday off. Mac's team just took the whole week off.
I mean, it's kind of good to see that one of the 3 stars of the week was one of the guys he traded for very early in the season, with Vladimir Tarasenko putting up 28.1. He's been cold all year, as has most of that St. Louis Blues team for whatever reason. And then you had defenseman Jeff Petrie put up 26.5 for the Rangers, and then a center that I honestly did not know before this day was Boone Jenner at 24.8 points for the Rangers. He apparently plays for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I had never heard of him. I was like, wait, I know it's not Bruce Jenner as much as I would like it to be.
His twin brother.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point, really. Yeah. So that's the matchups for the week, and we'll move on to Week 16 here with our predictions, and we'll obviously get yours in here as well, Kevin. But we'll start with the Rangers versus my Blackhawks. Obviously, like we said, the Rangers are sitting at 4-11, only 1 game behind the Minnesota Wild. And me sitting at the top of the Chelios division. Will this be the week that the Rangers overthrow myself, but also make a move up to tie the Minnesota Wild? What do you guys think?
No. And I'm even going to give the benefit of the doubt that he remembers to set his lineup. And I'm still going to say no.
All right. So I've got the same pick. Obviously, I'll take my Blackhawks, who've been red hot. And a lot of it obviously being led by Patrick Kane, even though he wasn't one of my stars of the week. He's been playing his ass off with 9 goals over his last 9 games and something like 25 points over his last 14 games. So I love seeing that. And Alex DeBrincat is finally breaking out. So I'm expecting those 2 to perform. So moving on to the next one, I'm going to toss it over to Jared first. Obviously, this is kind of a rematch.
Right.
as you guys faced earlier this year, and I do believe he knocked you off, and it was a really good week for him. But obviously, Keith's Avalanche versus your Mighty Ducks. Who's taking the matchup this week?
Well, my team, even with my record, the last few weeks has not been clicking on all cylinders. I had an injury here or there, but not enough to really make that even a legitimate excuse. I'm hoping this is the week everything starts clicking again like it did for me earlier in the year. But until proven otherwise, I mean, the Avalanche deserves the nod in this one, so I'm picking the Avalanche. It's one of those things. He did win this past week, but it was close enough. I'm almost viewing it as a loss for him from the perspective of he's played so well. There's no way he would lose 2 in a row. So obviously, I'm going to pull out all the stops, try to pull this off. But again, till proven otherwise, you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's playing so well.
What about you, Kevin? What are you feeling in this matchup here?
I hope the Ducks pull it out. I
think
you got it, Jared.
Thank you.
I know I trash talked you, what was that, a few weeks ago?
Yeah.
But I think you can do it.
I've got the guys to do it if they'll come to play.
Yeah, I mean, we need somebody to slow them down.
Yep.
So my picks are always with my head, but my heart is with you, Jared. I'm hoping that your Ducks can pull it out, but my head had to go with, if I want to be right, I'm probably going to take the Avalanche. As much as I think that the Avalanche are going to win, I'm going to be behind you 100%. So I'm hoping, just because we saw what happened between you, me, and Keith with NFL as we ran away with a lot of it, just the fact of this whole league being in it is a lot of fun. So I'm hoping you can bring him back down to that tie, and especially make
you to lose just so y'all can be tied.
I want to see like a real close playoff races, especially just the seedings. The way it is right now, it can 6 weeks from now, going into that final week of the regular season, we could be sitting at anything. So I'm curious to see where it ends up, and this will be one of the biggest ones.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So we move on to our third game of the week, and that'll be the LA Kings taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm going to start this one off, and I'm going to take, obviously, the Kings. Barnes has been doing a lot better with his team. He's figuring it out. I expect him to make a move within the coming weeks. And even with that, I think Steve's Tampa Bay Lightning are just having a rough time. He's figuring out hockey as it is. I know he's more of a hockey and NFL guy, so he's looking to strengthen those teams. Maybe he makes a move, maybe not. But I know he's trying to figure out his team as well as I've talked to him. So I'm going LA. And what about you, Jared?
Yeah, I'm going to go with LA. I mean, the Lightning, he's got some talent on the team, like you said. I mean, Barnes is in the same position. They come in, they're trying to put their own identity on their team. Right now, Barnes overall, the Kings, been playing a little bit better. So I'm going to go with him, but I could see this being a pretty competitive game. I don't think it'll be as close as Avalanche and Carolina last week, but I could see it being a game that's in doubt going into the weekend. But I'm gonna lean Kings.
And then what about you, Kevin? What do you have in this matchup of the battle of replacement managers?
As much as I don't want it to, I'm gonna have to go with the Kings. I mean, like I said, he's figuring out his team. I hope he doesn't make a move soon, but I know he's going to. And I mean, he's gonna give me a fight for my spot for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from what I've seen, he is very competitive. He's not willing to lay down and just take it. So I'm excited to see Barnes more active, and especially I know he wants to jump on these shows, so it'll be fun to see where it goes from there.
Yep.
And we'll move into the Battle of the Beasts in Game 4 with the Predators and the Wild. I'll toss this one over to you, Kevin, as this is your matchup. You're taking on Mac. Mac's had the worst luck in the league, and I believe he is sitting at a 6-game losing streak. Yep, 6-game losing streak. Do you think you are going to hand him that 7th loss of the year? Or 7th loss in a row?
I hope so. I mean, it's going to be tough. As I'm looking at it right now, he's got almost a 40-point lead. So that's a decent amount to be up by. I mean, this might be another one of those Carolina-Nashville close matchups where it's that one player that makes the complete difference.
What about you, Jared?
I mean, I'm going from the perspective. I mean, Nashville, Kevin, they've been playing really well overall. Wild, we've talked about it, running into the ground perhaps, but even with some of the talent he has on his team, the young guys, sometimes those young guys, go through spells where they're not playing well. That's been kind of the Wild, and so I'm going Nashville. I think like several of these matchups, it could be close for a while, but ultimately I think Kevin and his Predators will pull away for about a 40, 50-point win.
I agree. I'm going with the Preds and Kevin on this one. It took me a second. I actually debated this one for a little while I was setting up the show, just because obviously we've seen the Wild put up some really good weeks. We've seen them put up some stinkers. But I think your Preds are just getting hot at the right time is the way it seems, Kevin. And I mean, you guys both have very little difference in terms of your points for and points against when it comes to luck, because he's had 20 more points scored against him than he's scored. You've had 50 more points scored against you than you've scored. So I expect this one to be close for most of the week. And I know you're trailing by 50 right now, but you also had 4 starts versus 13 for him.
Yeah.
So I expect that to balance out in the wash, and I'm going to take your Preds in this one. And now this last one comes down to a very, very important matchup for me, because this is another one of I wanted to choose with my heart, but I went with my head, and it's the Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. I wanted to pick the Hurricanes simply because it would give me an advantage if I win this week, but ultimately I'm going with the Vegas Golden Knights. They've just been playing better. They've gotten hot at the right time, similar to your Preds, and especially with Giordano and Carlson performing and getting guys like Jamie Benn and Voracek into his lineup is going to make a difference for him. So I've got the Golden Knights. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, I'm going to go Golden Knights as well. Honestly, though, out of all the matchups, this is probably the one I have the least confidence in. Not because I don't believe in the Knights, but, I mean, again, Carolina, even though they lost last week, gave the Avalanche run for their money, and they're starting to play better. And overall, even after everything he traded off, I mean, they match up pretty well. This, and probably because it is the last game on the docket here, this may be the game of the week. Unless I just blow out Avalanche, then we'll call that one. But as far as competitiveness, I mean, I could see this one going either way. But again, Chris and his Vegas team has proven to be one of the best teams week in and week out. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, this could be one of those games where it does come down to an extra start here or there. May make the difference. And as we've seen, Carolina likes to play those close games. Maybe if he keeps it close, maybe he pulls it out, but I'm going Vegas.
And then, Kevin, what about you?
I'm going Vegas. I think that trade he made off this week, I know it kind of favored, I guess, the Avalanche a little bit more, but I think that would make a big difference in Vegas, I guess, their forward positioning, scoring.
I think in the long run that makes a difference. It favors the Avalanche, but in terms of this year and
like
probably
right now,
it definitely favors the Golden Knights. So it's one of those things of it'll end up balancing out, I think.
Yeah.
But I think with those additions, Golden Knights look really good, especially when they've had some cold streaks recently. So we seem pretty connected on most of these, even though we all say they're going to be close. We all seem to have kind of leaned the same way.
Yep.
So let's move on into basketball, and I'll kind of let you guys handle this a little bit more. I kind of want to see how you guys do it. Basketball hasn't been my thing for the longest time, so I'm getting back into it. Obviously, more of the terms with it, just kind of how it's talked about. I've been watching and listening more, so I'll kind of let you guys run this how you see fit. So obviously, starting off, league reminder, the trade deadline is 1 week after the hockey trade deadline, and that'll be Sunday, February 3rd at 10:59 Central Standard Time. And that's how it'll be every year, obviously, with NHL starting about a week or so ahead of NBA. That'll give us time. That way, okay, NHL is done. kind of focus on NBA now of here's what we want to do. And there are 8 weeks left in regular season play. And that'll kind of lead in here to the division. And I'll let you kind of take this one away between either of you, Jared or Kevin, whichever one of you wants to lead this.
I'll jump in real quick. I mean, this Michael Jordan division, up for grabs for sure. The battle of the Chris's, touched on that in hockey, but in basketball, it's even more just critical every game for them. And this past week, those Atlanta Hawks made a statement. I mean, we'll get to it here in a little bit, but this is going to be a division that's going to come down, I think, the final week. I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I agree. That's Michael Jordan's going to be the last week. I mean, you got Minnesota 12 games behind Atlanta, and Atlanta 1 game behind Lakers. So, I mean, one bad week can make a completely flip-flop that whole division.
Oh, yeah. And really, if you look at it, it really has last couple of weeks. I believe Barnes did capture the lead about, 2 weeks ago for a short time, maybe a week ago. And then Chris and the Hawks have taken it, battling back. So it's going to be a good battle between those guys. And, some of the pickups we had, John, you and Dallas picking up T.J. Warren. He's definitely a glue guy. I remember watching him in college. Good guy to plug into your lineup there. Barea, definitely not a long-term guy for me, but he was plugging a hole for me, giving me some assists and things. So you hate to see a guy, anybody rupture their Achilles, but at his age, 34, he's going to have a tough road back.
Yeah.
Knicks, I definitely like the pickup of Bam Adebayo, young guy with some upside. Really, the thing is with the Knicks, he's got the talent. He's just got to get that lineup set. I mean, that dude's got an all-star team, but got to set that lineup. But Bam Adebayo definitely like adding that talent. And, Denver Nuggets said bye-bye to Luke Cornett. That was just a short pickup probably to get an extra start or two.
I will say, goddamn the Knicks for picking up Bam, because he was the last person I expected to pick him up. I had bid for him. I don't remember what I bid for him, and I checked. I think it was next morning. I was like, whatever. If I get him, I get him. I'll check in the morning. And I saw that it was the Knicks of all people that picked him. I was like, God damn it, because I figured, okay, he'll get some run with the Heat at some point, so I can stash him on my young team as I build something. And, of course, the Knicks ended up stealing him away. So that was
and he'll probably just be on his bench, right?
the way it's looked, most likely. But, obviously, that's kind of the news for this week. A lot of pickups, no real trades. And I'm curious to see, especially with how close it is getting, like you guys said, and the fact that, I mean, we've got a real close matchup there. And even though your team is dominating in your division, Jared, there's still a lot of time to play, especially with your Pelicans battling for a playoff spot, Kevin. I'm excited to see how it turns out. And we really haven't seen a lot of trades in NBA. And I don't know if it's because some of us are learning it or learning the value of it, or if it's just the fact that, okay, I feel confident with this team. It's more just playing the season out. I think it's a lot of that too.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit of both. And, and NBA being the last season of the 4 that started for us, I have a feeling we'll get a little bit of a surge, maybe some trades at some point. At least I hope so. I'd like to see some movement, but yeah, I think it's a mixture of what you said for sure.
So let's get into our first matchup of the week, and this is obviously between you and myself. So I'll let you take this one, as you stumped me this week.
Yeah, I mean, my Raptors playing well. I mean, I've got a talented team. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've got a talented team across all positions. But as we've seen, as Chris and I were going back and forth, the Hawks, joking back and forth. We all like to smack talk, but we all do it for fun. But it was a true point that sometimes you can have a dominant team in any sport, and then it just doesn't work out. So I've got that in the back of my mind. I'm playing well right now, but you never know. I mean, things can change one day. So yeah, it was a pretty big win for my Raptors this week. We expected that. You're in rebuild mode, and got yourself some picks for next year loading up there. So I definitely think the Mavericks next year are going to be a much different team.
Oh, of course, and of course, since Simmons has left my team, he's been playing his ass off. But it's like for me, it was like, okay, 15 points a night and never double-digit assists, never double-digit rebounds. It's like I have maybe 10 once in a while rebounds,
right.
And now it's been okay, 20 here, 20 there.
Yeah, he's pretty much. This week averaged a triple-double for me. So
he may never make a three-point shot in his career, but he's going to be solid for you. And that it definitely showed here with obviously you don't need him to shoot three-pointers for you, so go ahead and take this one over.
Yeah, and that was the thing. That's why Simmons, for me, added, not to harp too much on our trade, but it was a key move for me in basketball and then a key move for you in baseball. But, my team, I built it strong around. I've got a strong 3-point core from the draft. So part of me starting to think he may never attempt a three, but even if he does, that's fine with me. I've got that. His versatility at that point guard, small forward, and then his ability, again, points, rebounds, assists, and steals was kind of the way I viewed my team. That was kind of like the last thing to fill in my little holes. The thing I'm going to lose every week, I don't see. I'll be honest, I do not see myself other than, I don't ever see myself having a 9-0 week like we saw. Who was it that had that like last week or the week before? Was it
Lakers over the Knicks, I believe.
Yeah, I don't ever see myself having a 9-0. 8-1 is probably the best you're going to see for me as talented as I am, because one of the key things, reason why I'm able to get so many high-end stats is I've got a lot of usage rate. My guys have the ball in their hand a ton, so they turn it over a lot, and so I'm probably always going to lose the turnover battle, and I did here, 70 more turnovers than you. But you look at the rest of the stats, my guys dominated throughout. So I'll take an 8-1 win every single week. Give it to me.
I will say that I did kind of forget about my lineup this week, especially just with my son coming home from visiting my in-laws and things like that. I kind of put basketball on the back burner. But I will say I'm pretty happy, even though I sold off Ben Simmons, I am happy with the young core that I still have in Devin Booker and Jamal Murray. That was one reason I was able to deal from it, is I have a strong point guard set up with those guys. So I expect my team to be different next year and still pretty decent field goal percentage. And especially I still have Porzingis coming back next year. So that was one reason I was like, I'm going to go rebuild. Even though Simmons is young, I feel like I can deal him at that point. So let's move on to the next one. And this was another dominant matchup. I don't know which one of you wants to take this one, but obviously Denver taking on Charlotte. Charlotte went into full fire sale mode pretty early in the year as they sold off guys like Kemba Walker. I don't remember who else they sold off, but obviously they were looking to do a fire sale very early.
Well, two of the guys he sold off are now Raptors. I've made that trade and got Bradley Beal and Victor Oladipo. So yeah, he definitely sold off some talented guys.
And it definitely showed as Denver dominated 7-2-0 versus 2-7-0. And it brings the Denver Nuggets up to 75-42-0 versus 31-85-1. And it was surprising for me to see Sean deal that number one overall or possible number one overall pick, especially with him selling off all those pieces that did become Raptors for you.
Right. Yeah, that's you're right, because usually if a team's selling off, usually the last thing they're going to try to move is picks. Usually they're trying to grab picks. So that definitely was an interesting move there by the Hornets. I'll go ahead and grab this matchup just since it is my long-term friend and rival Nuggets. If you compared what the Nuggets did this week to even what I did, I would have dominated him this week for playing, but this is a team his Nuggets team is a team that can certainly on any given week can give me a run for my money. He's got a strong team across the board. You look here, dominating, and field goal percentage is actually a pretty good gap there. The 3-pointers. He struggles at the line. That's definitely an Achilles heel of him, it seems. He's a strong rebounding team. I mean, just look down the line: assists, steals, blocks. Much like me, like I alluded to, this may be the one team I could beat on a weekly basis on turnovers. He had 121 this past week.
You guys were pretty much neck and neck had you guys actually faced off. I think you guys were – the biggest difference was points scored, but between you and him, it was 1 here, 2 there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how close we've been matching up. And this is a matchup that basically it went the way we would have expected, for him to dominate this one. So, as he's been in every other league, I tip my cap to him. I mean, he is in the thick of it. I've got a decent lead on him in the division, but obviously anything could happen. And certainly once you get to the playoffs, I mean, it's one and done at that point, as we know.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the Hornets do because, I mean, yeah, they did sell off a lot of guys, but they could end up taking a lot of chances in free agency, especially kind of like I've done with TJ Warren or whoever else, as we kind of did in baseball as well, is you have that opportunity. Okay, I'm going to grab this young guy. He's kind of starting to perform, and grab those guys that everybody kind of dumps off just because they don't feel like they're doing anything for them this year.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, that's a perfect point. I mean, because you think about, I mean, I had this case just here recently where I had 4 guys on injured, on injured reserve, and they started getting healthy at the same point where I had to make some decisions. I had to cut some guys, and, may not be a savior type guy, but it's maybe could be a guy that plugs holes. So, yeah, keeping an eye on that waiver wire is key.
Well, and I was surprised to see, obviously, Denver Nuggets team MVP this week was Luka Doncic, and he's been he's been stellar this year. And I really thought the Nuggets were going to take him number 1 overall for a while there before our draft. I didn't think he would actually do it, and I was thinking I should have grabbed him just because he was talking about it. But unfortunately, I didn't. But Doncic had a hell of a week as you look at it with – you look at his stats, he put up 112 points, not 1 block, 7 steals, but almost 30 rebounds, almost 30 assists. It was close between him and someone else on his team, but because Doncic filled up the stat line the way he did, it was hard to take it away from him. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox was up at 77 points, and a lot of it was just the fact that the triple-digit points, double-digit almost everywhere else, it was hard to take it away from him.
Yeah, you mentioned Fox. That's been a guy that has been a nice surprise for him. I mean, I remember watching him quite a bit in college, but he has been a pleasant surprise for him the way he's been playing. Very, very consistent week to week. So great grab there for him.
Absolutely. So let's move on to our third one of the week, and this was between the Timberwolves and the Knicks. I didn't know how this would go. Just the fact that obviously Minnesota's had some bad luck between all sports. They've had some weird luck in terms of like, okay, they'll win a week they probably shouldn't. And the Knicks are obviously the Knicks with Vic, and we don't know if he sets his lineup, if he's not going to. And like you alluded to earlier, Jared, he does have a superstar team, and LeBron has been out, which hurts him. But he did end up dropping this week by a score of 3-6. Obviously, Timberwolves gained 6 wins to their credit, and they do move up to 55-61-1, overtaking the Knicks with 53-63-1. So I kind of want to see what you think on this one, Kevin, and go ahead and kind of lead us through this.
Oh, I mean, at least Minnesota had the opportunity to beat Vic this week, so it wasn't too sour for the week. I mean, if you look at it, free throw percentage.
I do believe I messed that up because that should be 80. Wait, why is that 182? I see what I did. I copied the rebound. That's like 182. I mean, what does he have? Charles or Shaq at the free throw line every time? Just
Shaq and DeAndre.
I was confused for a second.
But yeah, I mean, obviously it should be 8-19 for the Knicks, so that was one of their wins on the week. They were able to take the 3-pointers, free throw, and turnover battle. And that was all they were able to manage this week.
I mean, still, they were actually decently close. I mean, all within 100. Minnesota almost kind of pulled it out their ass. The more I look at it.
Well, yeah, especially 50 starts to 33. That's one of those ones that this is why we're so confused with the Knicks, is because if they set their lineup, they would be so dominant. I mean, and especially when you have Kyrie Irving hurt last week. You had guys like, obviously, LeBron James was in there for a while. Enes Kanter was one that if he just sets his lineup, he's going to be a dominant team.
He's still pushing playoff, too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's right there, especially had he won this week, it would have given him a bigger advantage over the Timberwolves.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks is a team, no offense to the player I'm about to say, but there is no reason with his lineup that Terrence Ross should ever be your team MVP.
But it's not – it wasn't a bad thing, though. I mean, you look at what Terrence Ross did this week, and for some reason not showing up here as I said it, but he did have 75 points, 15 3-pointers with almost a 900 free throw percentage. And it came between him and Russell Westbrook. Westbrook was almost my option there, as he put up way more assists and more rebounds. But the fact of 14 turnovers obviously made a big difference there. So,
yeah, he'll turn it over
either one, it could have been Westbrook or Ross. Ross just with the 75 points and the better free throw percentage, which put him – he was able to take it with the 8-14, I thought, made a bigger difference. So
yeah, he definitely deserves some credit. And quick on Timberwolves before we move on, good to see Trae Young mentioned there. I mean, for Timberwolves, both the rest of this year and future, I mean, he's a key player for them. So good to see him have a good week.
Yeah, he turned out a lot better than I thought he would, putting up 54 points, just over 400 field goal percentage. I mean, he was able to do a lot. Obviously, he's going to be a big turnover guy, but Trae Young's getting there. He's definitely showing a lot of what he showed in college, and it's going to take some time for him to get to his ceiling. But the fact that Trae Young was the team MVP for him is not only good for this year, like you said, but the future. And he's one of those bright stars that he was a very polar guy, I think, going into this year because he looked so good in college, and nobody knew if he could make that next step to the pros in the NBA. So it was fun to see him do what he did, especially he's going to be a good three-point shooter, 6 3-pointers on the week. So I'm excited to see where he goes in the future.
Agreed.
Now, as we move on, these matchups are going to get closer, and this one was fairly close between the Lakers and the Hawks. I'll grab this matchup. This one's going to be a lot of fun. And this was one of the ones that I feel like, just looking at the stat line, it seemed like it wasn't close, but it really was. The Hawks took this week 6-3 and ended up bumping themselves just behind the Lakers at this point. The fact that they weren't able to overtake the Lakers kind of sucks for them, for Chris. But that one tie earlier in the year is huge. The fact that you would have had the same record had you won or lost. Obviously, you take that tie, turn it into a win. You're tied right there for first place. And this one was a fun matchup. You look at how close it was. The fact that obviously the Hawks lost in field goal percentage. They lost in free throw percentage. But the bigger ones, 6 steal difference, 2 block difference, only about 80 points difference. And yeah, there's a lot more 3-pointers for the Hawks, but the Lakers are right there with them. And just the fact that Barnes is going to make he's going to make some magic happen at some point, I think. And the fact that he was able to get that kind of production with only 81 turnovers makes him a strong candidate to even challenge you or the Nuggets, Jared. He's going to be, I think, a surprise team, one of those ones that comes out in the end that nobody really talks about, especially with Barnes being so busy and not as active in the chat recently. I think he's going to sneak up on you guys and really surprise a lot of people, even though he dropped.
I'd agree. Chris, big hoops guy anyway, but his team He's got a good mixture. He's got some superstars. I mean, obviously Anthony Davis may be the best fantasy basketball player. He's got him, and then he's got good guys to plug every which way you look. I mean, every stat category, he's got some guys that can do it. So he's one of those teams that even if you beat him like Hawks did this week 6-3, when you dig into the numbers, a lot of ways it could have very easily flipped. So he's not a team that's going to be necessarily blown out. He's going to stay in these matchups, which, like you said, makes him a dangerous team. Especially if he does go out there and make himself a big trade, land another superstar perhaps. I mean, that could certainly play a role. Again, I don't think we can talk about it enough, but this battle between these two in this division, I mean, which one makes a big move first, could be key. We know Atlanta has been active in trades across all leagues. So does he make a move first, or does Barnes and the Lakers make a move? I mean, it's going to come down to the wire between these two. This is going to be a fun division to watch.
Absolutely, and he did it without Rudy Gay being active because he was hurt this last week, and you had Robert Covington, who's not as big of a piece for him, but obviously rebounds, and Covington every once in a while will give you about 1 or 2 assists a night. But Gay usually gets 6 and 2 in terms of that, and it's the fact that that's where he was lacking this week. So when he can get healthy, he's going to be a very dangerous team.
Agreed. Yeah, both of these teams, barring a complete collapse, going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be dangerous outs for sure.
Oh, for sure.
So let's move on to our last one, and this came down to Kevin and Steve, and this was a really fun one to watch all week. I thought you were going to have a little bit better luck there, Kevin, but I'll let you kind of lead in with this one since this is your team.
Well, all week, I mean, we were back and forth between 5-4, 4-1. I honestly expected to drop this week. Steve put up a great fight. He kept it close. I did better than I thought I would. And luckily I got the win. I'm 5-4. That put me at 57-60, so I'm right there at 500. Pushing playoffs, which is, I guess, a good factor.
Of course, and that's what you've been trying to do all year.
Yeah. At least have something looking forward.
I mean, I'm trying to remember what you did in baseball because you were the Houston Astros. That's right. Yeah, you did a rebuild there, and then obviously you had some bad luck in football.
Yeah, so it hasn't been that great of a start to our dynasty, but hell, I did better in hockey and basketball than I thought I would.
I mean, you're on the brink of a playoff spot in both sports, so I'm excited to see it, and especially this matchup. It came down really close. This one was crazy to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much 5-4 all week. It flip flopped between the two of us.
I mean, as you look here, obviously you had the advantage in field goal percentage, and you've been a good shooting team from the field all year, which is good to see. And the 876 free throw percentage is great. That's one of the higher marks that we've seen on any week. And that'll be something fun to see at the end of the year where that free throw percentage record will be set. But 876 is going to definitely be up there just because everybody's going to have that guy that drains from that stat who obviously shoots 650 or 700 and really brings it down. But 876 is great. You fell just behind in rebounds, and that's something that ball bounces one way or another that you could have easily had 20 more on the week. I mean, 1 per night per guy, it happens.
Yeah.
Assists, 164 was great. You were just trailing in steals, not that far behind in blocks, but the fact that you were able to do it in 86 turnovers to his 69, obviously you lost that one, but compared to the Nuggets and Raptors there, you're way below with their turnovers, which is great. That's should be a winning category for you every week. So I was glad to see you perform as well as you did, and it was weird to see it be such a close score considering how well your team played, especially with 87 3-pointers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know Bulls are toward the bottom of our standings at the moment, but I mean, they're still fighting. They really didn't kind of die off like some teams do toward. I mean, we're getting toward the end. So now I guess you can say they're not really playing for a draft pick. They're still trying to play for a decent spot, even if they don't make the playoffs. I mean, actually, now that I look at it, they're still in playoff. They're in the reach, if you want to say.
Right, I get what you mean. Yeah, they're right there, and they've got a pretty good team. So I'll be excited to see what they do, especially led by their team MVP in power forward Joel Embiid. He had a great week, and just kind of looking over it today, he had such a crazy week. Over 500 field goal percentage, 32 rebounds, 81 points out of a power forward like that. He's leading that Philly team that seems to be going through a huge change recently, especially with Jimmy Butler on the team. He's been laying waste to everyone in the league in terms of, well, you suck and I'm better than you, and it's definitely something different to see for sure. I mean, he's been traded to twice within the last 2 seasons, so I mean, who knows how that ends up, especially working on that Philly team. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on. But you played a hell of a week, and you had obviously Stephen Curry, 90 points, double digits in rebounds and assists, 19 3-pointers. That's a hell of a week for him, shooting almost 500 while shooting those 3-pointers that he makes look so easy. Yeah. And he's going to be huge for you. Even I wouldn't be surprised if you made a deal here in the next few days, just because obviously you want to push for that playoff spot like you have, and it'll be fun. So why don't we move on to Week 14 matchups and kind of give our predictions here. I don't think I added them in for you guys, but we'll put them in here. Obviously, I'll let you guys talk first. Let's start with the first matchup. Two of the teams more at the bottom. Obviously, my Dallas Mavericks taking on the Chicago Bulls that just lost last week. Who are you guys taking in this matchup?
You know, this is a close matchup in a lot of ways. I'm going to lean Mavericks in this from the standpoint that you're kind of already kind of looking at your rebuild. You're staying active. You're trying to pick up some guys, find hot hands on the wire. And a close matchup like this, I mean, that lots of times makes the difference. So I'm going to lean Mavericks.
I would do it to you, John, but I'm going to go Bulls.
That's who I went with as well, because I know there's some pieces that obviously I've got younger guys with Alonzo Trier and Jaren Jackson's been the surprise for me. I didn't think he'd come out balling like he has this year, and he's been fun to watch. But obviously I've got some smaller pieces that are in some roles at this point, so I'm going to go Bulls as well, unfortunately. So I think he'll sneak it out past me. It all depends on especially health too, so we'll see how that goes.
Yep.
So, and obviously, Jared, you take on the Charlotte Hornets this week. Where do you think this matchup's going to go? Is there really any question?
I mean, I don't think so. I say that some ways I can. I don't think so. I just knowing that even though I've got about a 10, 11-point game lead on the Nuggets, this is a week where I really need to take advantage, and I really need, again, I'm just always going to say I'm probably going to lose turnovers. So I really, really could use another 8-1 win, which, those are tough to come by because the percentages can always go either way. But anything less than 7-2, I'm going to feel like I kind of let the Nuggets off the hook a little bit because, I've got to keep pushing on him. So I'm going to go with myself. Hopefully I can pull off a big, big win.
What about you, Kevin?
Oh, there's no question about it. I'm going to go with the Raptors. I mean, the Hornets, we have an owner, right?
Yes, that is Sean. That's Sean and his team that he sold off fairly early. He's right. Like, yeah, baseball's my thing. So yeah, we know where his loyalties lie.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna be too worried about it. It doesn't seem he's too worried about it. So, I mean, I think it's going to be an 8-1 victory for the Raptors.
That's
Anything
what
less than 8-1, I'll take as a disappointment.
I think 7-2 is the one. Like Jared said, it's really tough to win those percentages at times, and one bad game can split those really hard. So I'm going to give it to the Raptors, and I think, like you said, Jared, 7-2. Anything less than that, you're leaving meat on the bone, and you really can't do that, especially with Keith right behind you. He's always looking to take the number one spot in each division. So
Right.
And mentioning Keith, he's obviously taking on Barnes with his Lakers. Where do you see this one going, Jared?
Obviously, we always pay a lot of attention to our own matchup, but beyond mine, this is probably the one I'm keeping my eyes on the most. I know both guys really well, so that plays a part, but really it's just these are two strong teams. You've got a division leader in the Lakers, and you got the Nuggets knocking on my door. These teams match up really, really well. This is going to be a battle here, so I'm going to lean Nuggets. I think he's got a little bit more. His team's playing a little bit better right now than Barnes and the Lakers. But this is a game that if the Lakers win, it's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be – I really wouldn't consider that really an upset from that perspective because Lakers have been playing pretty well. Like we said a while ago in his matchup, even though he lost 6-3 last week, just the way his team is built, he's going to be in every category. It's going to be close. And when you look at the Nuggets, he's got the same issue I do. Turnovers are an issue, and either one of the percentages or both percentages could go either way. So the Lakers definitely have an opportunity here. This may be one of those situations, like we mentioned in hockey, where it's going to come down to, if you can squeeze 2 or 3 extra starts out of some guys, that could be the key difference in those counting stats. But I'm going to go Nuggets.
What about you, Kevin?
I'm going to go Barnes. I mean, Barnes he's been here for about, a month and a half now?
Just about that.
And he's made an impact on both of his teams. I mean, Lakers he hasn't made a big impact on. They're already kind of doing okay by themselves, but I mean, he's gonna keep it going. And he's gonna what is it? I think he might I know he's not gonna get it this week, but he's not going to be too far behind you, Jared.
Yeah, he's definitely making a push, and especially even though everyone's focusing on the Nuggets and the Raptors, he's making that silent push like we talked about earlier of he's going to be right up there with everyone. And to split the difference here, it comes down to me. I'm going to end up going with the Nuggets just because I know more about his team. I feel like he's been playing hotter. Obviously, the Lakers lost in a very close matchup overall. But I think I'm going to go with the enemy that I know in the Denver Nuggets, and I think he's going to have it, even though he's off to a really bad start this week. Marcus Morris hasn't really played well, neither has De'Aaron Fox, as the Lakers are up 7-2 right now. Obviously, it's 2 starts versus 8, so it's going to make a difference going into tomorrow. But it'll be an uphill climb for the Nuggets, and I think they're going to take it this week. Who knows how much it's by, but I think the Nuggets squeeze it out this week. So then I'll start with you with Kevin on this one. Timberwolves versus your Pelicans. Who you got in this one?
Oh, I'm going to go with myself on this one. I mean, my team's, I guess, they've been winning at least 5 games a week the last few weeks. I know I had that 1 week. I believe I lost to the Nugs. Mm-hmm. And I believe I was like 3-6. So, I mean, the last month, I've been playing good, and I hope I keep it up. I think I will keep it up. I mean, I got a good lead on Minnesota right now, but I mean,
I would say 8-1-0 is a good start to the week.
Yeah.
So I originally had you marked down for myself as well anyways. So just your team has been playing very well overall. You've had the better overall stats. And as much as I like the Timberwolves and what he's built for not really knowing basketball that well, I'm going to give you the credit here, and I've got you winning this week. What about you, Jared?
Yeah, I was going to go Pelicans. Kevin and his team, like he said, I mean, he's been playing really, really well the past month and a half. His team's really been playing well. we all have that week where it's a little closer than we thought, like he had last week with the Bulls. But to me, that's for him. He still pulled it out, and it's just kind of a small bump in the road. And Minnesota has got some pieces for the future, but I think as things stand right now, Kevin in New Orleans has a more talented squad that he's putting on the court each night. So kind of like in my matchup earlier, I'm going to say, Kevin's got to be thinking to himself, obviously any win's a win, but, if he falls below that 7-2 mark, he's going to feel like he probably left something off.
Gave it to him, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's times where you want to take as many as you can, and that baseline mark that you want to hit, and you need to because you know where your team should sit. So, yeah, especially you don't want to leave points on the board. You don't want to leave meat on the bone, whatever analogy you want to use, and that it is what it is. So moving on to the last one, obviously we've got the New York – I'm going to call them the New York Knicks, and I feel like we've got to come up for a nickname for them just because – obviously, we know Vic doesn't always set his lineup, and they will take on the Hawks. And this is an easy call for me. I'm going to take the Hawks. We know Chris is very active with his team. We know he's very active on the waiver wire and setting his lineups. And especially in a sport like basketball that is mostly counting stats, I'm going to take the Hawks with this one. With everything that he's done with his team, I expect him to come out and play well, especially with the Knicks dealing with all the injuries that they've been dealing with recently.
Oh, yeah, I'm right there with you, John. I got the Hawks.
Yeah, I'm going Hawks, too. I mean, we said it before. I mean, Knicks, you pick out his top 5 players, they're as talented or more talented than any team in the league. But Chris has got a talented team in his own right, and he is active. And being active is a huge key. I mean, you cannot underestimate squeezing out all those starts. So, Chris is highly competitive. He's got a good team. I think he rolls this week. Again, some of those stats percentages can go either way, but I'm looking probably about like a 6-3 win for Hawks.
Yeah, it sounds about right the way he's been playing. I know he's going to be chasing the Lakers, and I know he's rooting for the Nuggets all that he can this week. Yeah. But I expect I expect a lot of these matchups to be close, and it'll be fun to watch. So we can always move into that next week when we get to it. So that was fun, guys. I'm glad that we were able to get the 3-man booth for the first time, and that was a blast. So I'm glad you guys were able to join. You guys have any final comments before we sign off for the night?
Well, I appreciate you inviting us on. The 3-man booth was fun. I enjoyed it, the interaction. Loving the competitiveness of both leagues. Hockey right now, I mean, it's crunch time. I know it's only 1 week ahead of NBA, but it just seems like it's so much later in hockey to me for some reason. It's just like maybe it's just because it's so close. But really, really looking forward to that. Appreciate all the hard work you do putting on the shows and everything. So always want to tip my cap to you and thank you for that. But thanks for the invite, and I'm glad to hop on anytime.
Of course, I'm glad. And I do agree that NHL feels more competitive. And I don't know if it's just because of the fact that we see the larger scores, obviously 300, 400, whatever it is. But it definitely seems like that, plus the fact that there seems to be more knowledge in the NHL overall for us, and with our group at least. So we'll see how that goes. But I especially think once we come down to those few last weeks, NBA will get more talked about.
Yeah, well, when it's the only game in town, the competitive nature will come out even more, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. So do you have anything you want to say before we sign off, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the invite. It was fun. I'm sorry it took so long to get my camera and all the work. But, yeah, I mean, like I know I mentioned it to you already. This is a fun league. Probably the most active league I've been in. I mean, I know there's a lot you do behind the scenes. And I mean, thank you.
I appreciate it. And it's a lot of fun, especially when everyone else is active. Because obviously there's other leagues that could be larger and you may have 40% or 30% of the people active. But just the fact that we have everyone in there talking and trash talking in a good way, it makes it a lot of fun. And it makes the work definitely worth it just to see you guys obviously wanting to join in and put the work in as well. So I appreciate everything you guys do. So thank you guys, and I'm excited to see where we go. And we will start talking about the playoffs and playoff seeding next week. when it comes to it. So we'll be adding those in there and kind of monitoring those even closer with both sports. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
Oh, can't wait.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
No, you too.